Lots of different new Nintendo Switch 2 updates to discuss today, starting with LOL Sakurai. 60-minute Kirby Air Riders Direct following a 45-minute plus presentation that we've seen of this game already. Yes, we are going to learn about roughly 2 hours of information for Kirby Air Rider pre-release, but we have the exact date and time to expect that. Then we have an exciting tease. If it is that, to be clear, we're kind of reading between the lines here with this one, but Nate the Hate has asked an interesting poll in regarding to Luigi's Mansion, which you might realize we are in the month of October, and it might make sense to be the closeout GameCube game edition for the month of October, so we'll cover that. There's some more talk around game key cards in the Nintendo Switch 2 sphere right now from the Final Fantasy VII director, and giving people a reason, once again, why they are utilizing a game key card and probably not what people want to hear, especially if you're a physical collector like me. Persona 3 Reload has some frame rate issues, and it does apparently seem that the team will be working on it, but it will be coming after launch of the game. And finally, there's been some virtual console talk online going around that probably is nothing, to be clear, but it's worth talking about and mentioning, and also setting those expectations on whether or not we'll ever see Nintendo revisit this format where you can buy their classic games at a standalone rate. But we'll break down all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we are going to first kick this off right over at Nintendo of America's official X account, where you can see what they tweeted out this morning. Join us on October 23rd at 6 a.m. Pacific time for a second Kirby Air Riders Direct with Mr. Sakurai. The live stream presentation will last roughly 60 minutes and feature more info on the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 game. Now, this is pretty funny to me because this is just Nintendo quite literally letting Sakurai make the decisions on how he wants to market this game. Nintendo would not release two different directs, one 45 minutes focused, one an hour plus, for a game that has not come out yet. That is not their marketing style, but this is clearly Nintendo just giving the marketing reins to Sakurai and saying, hey, listen, if you want to explain the exact thought process in why things work the way they do in this game from a development standpoint, and you really want to talk about the nitty-gritty details of why Kirby does this specific animation when you crash into somebody, that's kind of the floor we're going to give you for this direct. So 60 minutes is a long time, in my opinion. I don't need to see 60 minutes more of Kirby Air Riders 2. I will be excited to learn about more features, maybe some more modes that we don't know about yet. I am not somebody who played the original Kirby Air Rider back on GameCube, so this franchise doesn't have like a ton of nostalgia for me or anything like that. That said, while I do feel like we don't need another racing battle style game in the same launch year as Mario Kart World, I do think that this one looks interesting and different enough that I'm definitely going to check it out and pick it up and talk about it on the channel here with you guys. So my interest has already peaked for the game. That said, I don't really feel like the 60-minute time slot makes that much sense or is needed at all for this game, but don't go into it expecting 60 minutes of brand new announcements and feature details. Sakurai will get into the nitty-gritty and the decisions, the reason why he made certain decisions from a development standpoint. That's just his style. That's absolutely what's going to be happening with this direct presentation, and really what I'm going to be watching online for as we get closer to it, because there's probably only a few more weeks where it would make sense to happen. That's going to be a Metroid Prime 4 game-specific direct, and I sure hope if Nintendo can clear an hour and 45 minutes of airtime for Kirby Air Riders with two separate directs, that they could at least give one direct to kind of package up in a 15 to 20 minute presentation some more details around Metroid Prime 4. And obviously the big hope would be that we would, by some miracle, see them actually announce and confirm Metroid Prime 2 and 3 HD remasters coming ahead of the launch of Metroid Prime 4. But the longer we wait for any kind of announcement like that, the less likely it gets. But Kirby Air Riders fans, you have another direct to look forward to, and it'll be 60 minutes in length, happening in just a couple days, bright and early in the morning. So I'll probably make a reaction video to it at some point if there's enough different things to talk about there. 60 minutes there should be, but again, this is going to be probably a very technical breakdown of the game and the reason why behind the why from Sakurai. So moving on from here, we have a fellow content creator sharing this out, and I did not see it anywhere else, so shout outs to Nintendo Land. Nate the Hate is making an interesting poll. Sometimes these are teases towards games and announcements, sometimes not, but this one I think is very timely. As you can see, have you ever played Luigi's Mansion? And that's the poll in question. Yes on the GameCube, yes on the 3DS, not yet, but will on GameCube NSO, and don't want to. And that's kind of the current results of his poll. Now, I think this is probably a clear tease that Luigi's Mansion will be coming to GameCube NSO Classics by the end of the month. It makes all the sense in the world if you think about where we are at, quickly approaching that Halloween season on October 31st. Luigi's Mansion is a spooky, scary themed game, and it would just make all the sense in the world for Nintendo to deliver this as an October title. And now this poll is popping up. I think we're going to get maybe some kind of announcement as soon as this Thursday. And then how they've been doing it typically with GameCube games, we get that week lead up. So let's say the 23rd, we get the announcement, and then the 30th, the game's actually available to play, which will really be Wednesday night for us here in the US, because Japan is technically a day ahead in terms of the time schedule and things. So anyway, I'm pretty much expecting some kind of announcement to happen this week for Luigi's Mansion Nintendo Classics officially now with this tease, and then we should be able to play it as soon as next week, which is going to be great because, well, we got Luigi's Mansion 2 Dark Moon, or they just named it HD for the Nintendo Switch. Luigi's Mansion 3 was obviously a great pickup for the Nintendo Switch and actually looked visually beautiful. We haven't really had a super easy way to play Luigi's Mansion in recent memory. And now that the GameCube NSO library is here, that was one of the launch titles, a big one for the GameCube. Just can't wait. I mean, I didn't complete it back in the day. I played it, didn't complete it. And that's actually one that I really want to go back through and play from start to finish. So perfect timing if Nintendo does end up indeed revealing and bringing the game to the service this calendar month. And I certainly hope they do. And I'm really expecting that they will. Not that I want to get everybody's expectations out there for 100% confirmation, but we haven't had that GameCube NSO edition for this month, and it's getting towards the end of the month, and it just makes a lot of sense for it to be Luigi's Mansion considering where we're at. Okay, from here we have Naoki Hamaguchi spoke again about his feelings on the Switch 2 game key cards, and this comes to us over from Stealth40K on Twitter, and he says, personally, I feel the loading issue for the game cartridge is more about the hardware spec of the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm not with Nintendo, so I can't really speak to that side. That said, I do feel like the game key card format that Nintendo created for the Nintendo Switch 2 is really amazing new idea that they had offered for us. I don't personally see Nintendo working towards improving the load speed for the cartridges. Rather, I feel that Nintendo will put more effort into popularizing the game keycard format, which again is a really fantastic idea for us developers. Also, we hope players familiarize themselves with what that costs them. That obviously is something we can help out with as well from the developer side. I think that the collaborative effort between Nintendo and publishers trying to promote the game keycard will be the best way forward for players in the future. And that's clearly not a popular take online, and rightfully so, because if you're unfamiliar with a lot of the controversy around the game keycard format for Nintendo Switch 2, it's that you're buying a cartridge to get a code essentially to download the game, and you can reuse and resell that code, which is nice, but there's nothing actually on the cartridge, meaning you're still relying on a server to get the game files. And the one kind of thing he's explaining there, and we actually have heard this from multiple developers, I believe originally with the Star Wars Outlaws team, is that apparently when it comes down to like big open world type environments, there is something of a noticeable lag in the cartridge format for Nintendo Switch 2 when compared to reading the data directly off the SSD internal storage of Nintendo Switch 2. Now, a big problem that Nintendo does not allow us to do and could mitigate all of this if you are to believe that as the reason. Some people think, oh, you could optimize, you could do what you need to do to get it to read off the game key, or the regular game cartridge rather. But let's just say, for benefit of the doubt reasons, you can't for some reason. Nintendo could allow via a firmware upgrade the ability to actually install the files of a game cartridge to the internal storage. Very similar to PlayStation and Xbox. If you purchase a game that is on the disc, what is initially happening the first time you put that disc into the system is it is ripping all the files off of the disc and putting it onto the internal SSD, because that additional speed is actually needed compared to what you can get off of a read-write speed from reading a disc. So if Nintendo just had the traditional cartridge format, once again this generation with multiple different sizes, but we also had an option to install game files to the internal storage for games that needed it, it would be the best of both worlds. But what they opted to do instead is this game keycard format that a lot of third-party devs are opting for, and that is just simply a cartridge that doesn't have anything on it other than the ability to access and download the game files from the server for the first time. And if you are a long-term game collector, you just know that there are negative ramifications to that, because we always have to rely on Nintendo's servers being online in order to access that game far in the future. And that may not be on everybody's radar, but it is on some. And I think of it now, how nice it is to have, a lot of the games that I enjoy and care about on the NES, SNES, N64, GameCube, Wii, and I don't have to ever worry about those games ever not being playable in the future. Whereas things that require additional download from the internet, you do always have to have that in the back of your mind. So I'm hopeful that during this generation, Nintendo maybe makes their physical media option a little bit more convenient. But that said, the cost benefit analysis still has to be there from the third-party devs. And if it's so much more expensive to go for the regular cartridge, which we know it probably is the case, especially considering certain games like Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection just passes on that extra cost to the consumer, where the Switch 2 on cartridge experience is $10 more than all the other consoles, clearly there's some additional cost being factored in there, and there has to be a reason and a benefit for third-party developers to want to go that route and put it on the cartridge. And whenever you're hearing the lag time of additional loading hiccups and stuff like that comes with the traditional cartridge format, and it's not there with the game key card, and you have that cost factored in there, I am actually more on the side of thinking we see Nintendo continue to stick to on cartridge releases, but every other developer and publisher from a third-party perspective, it's going to be very hit and miss this generation, as long as that's around as the solution. So here's hoping it goes a different route than that. I'm just not personally expecting it to. Then next up, in a story you don't typically like to see, but at least maybe a silver lining if you're somebody who's planning to pick up Persona 3 Reload, and you've been hearing some of the issues about the frame rate with the game online. Well, we have some official statements here. So Atlas planning to fix Persona 3 Reload Switch 2 frame rate after launch. Persona 3 Reload general producer Yoshihiro Komori has recently taken part in an interview around the upcoming Persona 3 Reload. There's a demo for the JRPG on the eShop, which you can check out, but as many have noticed, there are some frame rate issues. Mr. Komori says that the team is aware of this and they are unable to address it in time for the game's release, though they will be fixing it post-launch with updates. The demo that was recently released on the Switch 2 eShop shows the game running at 30 FPS, but with some frame rate hiccups. Is the team hoping to have those problems worked out before the final release of the game? And Komori answers here, we are currently taking steps to improve this. Since careful Q&A is required, it was difficult to address this in time for the main game's release, but will be addressed in future patches. So obviously not the ideal situation. It's nice that the developers are aware of it and they're going to streamline it, but you really want to have that good gameplay experience on any game you pick up day one, and not necessarily something that is going to just be fixed after the fact, and you actually hope that it does get fixed up to an acceptable standard. So maybe, give Persona 3 Reload just a little bit of time if you don't want to buy it day one and you really want to play through it in the best quality. It does sound like a patch will be coming out shortly after this game's release, but not there initially at launch, which I would just assume, if you need the extra development time to get it running beautifully and up to an acceptable standard, just take that extra time and hold it back. But doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, but there will at least be a patch on the way if you are somebody who's currently eyeing this game. And lastly, to close this out here, something that has been circulating online, which I don't think actually ties into the return of Virtual Console, but you can see shared by Mike Odyssey over on X, that yeah, indeed, there is a patent application for a renewal of the Virtual Console trademark, which is just something that happens. Like trademark renewals, you can't really tie them to Nintendo for sure working on something. Now, they can be indicative of that, as they do typically renew and register trademarks when they are doing something behind the scenes, like bringing back a service or a game or whatever the case. But in this particular one, it just seems like one of those legal things they have to do to continue to own the Virtual Console trademark. And while I would love to see the option come back to purchase the games one-off, I think Nintendo is guns blazing ahead on the NSO path, and I just don't foresee them really fragmenting that off and allowing you to buy it individually. As much as I think that should be an option, it's just kind of going to be the situation that Nintendo makes you get NSO in order to have access to be fair, a now very large games collection. I mean, I don't think I would have the amount of games in my Nintendo Switch collection as I do with NSO if it was a virtual console. I would definitely skip up on a lot of the games that were added, and I would definitely not pay $5 to $10 for a lot of the ones that I may only play, you know, a couple hours of here or there if I get in the mood for it. Whereas with NSO, increasingly, it's become a larger and larger library of classics to play. And the best case scenario would be they do bring back Virtual Console, but it's just that optional one-off purchase if you just want to own it digitally. PlayStation actually does that on the PlayStation Plus, so it would be nice to see something like that, but if you're seeing all the rumors, talks online about Virtual Console coming back, probably not happening. Can never say never with Nintendo, obviously, but more options are always better, and I would love to see an option to purchase these games announced, but I'm not personally expecting it, so just wanted to clear the air and get on the same page with that. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of all the different stories we talked about today. Are you excited for a Kirby Air Riders Direct that will be a 60-minute presentation roughly, following the last 45-minute presentation we saw? Do you think that's going to help do anything to sell the game to you further? Do you think we're getting Luigi's Mansion added to GameCube NSO this month? What do you think of the comments around the game key card and the read and write speed? And do you think game key card's here to stay this entire generation, or will Nintendo solve for it by adding something like the ability to install off of a full regular cartridge? And what do you think about Persona 3 Reload? Are you eyeing that game at release, especially now that we have the comments around the patch? And do you personally want to see some kind of virtual console option come back to Nintendo Switch, or Nintendo Switch Online rather, as an option to pick up these games one-off instead of only having them tied to a subscription service? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.